Welcome aboard the Mad Pastors Podcast. Honest pastors, honest conversations. Powered by G6 Allies. You may now feel free to move about the podcast. Well, hey everybody, we're back again.
Good to see you guys.
Every
Welcome
week,
back.
we're like a case of plantar fasciitis. You just can't get rid of us, you know.
Okay.
It's plantar's wart. Either way, if you've ever had one, you know what I'm talking about. That's why you shower with shoes on in the gym. Shower with shoes. But either way,
That's the takeaway from today's podcast: is shower with shoes when you're at the gym.
it really is. Let's just
Okay.
be honest. Even at the so we just had a baby. We talked about that.
Yeah.
But even when we had a baby, they said bring shower shoes to the hospital, which made me very nervous about the.
Or you don't clean the hospital bathrooms?
They should.
Rooms?
They
That's
should.
weird.
But I will say ours is pretty nice. But we are continuing. We're almost done with this series. And I don't know. We'd love to hear from you guys. Maybe we do less series and more like single topics or whatever it looks like. But we always want to hear from you if this is helpful, if it's not. But we love it. So we're finishing up our series Unscripted. A series with a logo so meta. We didn't even spend any time designing it. It's just unscripted. But either way, we've got a couple good ones, I think. And so we didn't even look at them or think about them other than the time we laid them out, and we have a million things going on, so we forget. But we mentioned it today. Here's this week's podcast, or this episode is the discussion about how do you lead people when you don't know where to go. And I think there's a lot of this. I don't know. This one's kind of loaded, not intentionally, but I mean, I think one really good explanation of that, or one good example, is COVID in 2020. Right? Like how many churches are like, God's given me a vision, and that vision is that we're going to go into every home. We're going to cook meals for every person. We're going to hold hands and hug each other every service. That's the vision from God. And then COVID happens. He's like, well, I guess that's not God's
What church
vision.
were you at?
Not that one. I didn't want to be at that one. I'm just assuming. But I mean, imagine even the embarrassment. I guess nobody's really too embarrassed unless you're Kenneth Copeland, and he's not even embarrassed. But they're blowing COVID away with the wind of the Spirit. But I don't even. Here's what's funny. I just see Kenneth Copeland pop up on TikTok. I don't watch that Joker, but it's pretty funny. He's such an idiot. He just goes up.
He's on TikTok, huh?
People
People are posting his
They
stuff,
post his stuff on TikTok. But who knows? That guy's probably on all kinds of stuff we don't want him to be on. Which I don't even want him to be on TV or in a pulpit. But either way, but I think this goes all the way to 2020, but it also goes just in general. I mean, I think the church is so full of leadership sensationalism, and it is sometimes it's really. I think what's funny is I post about this and people go, "It's so sad," and it's always the people that's their problem too. But you know, we don't disciple as a church. We don't do community well, at least in our region of the world, very well. We're all about ourselves, and yet we're always trying to find some new big initiative to do, and then as soon as that one burns out, we find another initiative. And I don't know, sometimes I wonder if more churches than we think don't know where they're going, and so they just keep coming up with destinations.
So are you suggesting that the common solution to not knowing where you're going is just to do more stuff?
Michael, I'm not suggesting it. I'm just straight out saying it. There's not a suggestion. I think
the plethora of things that we do and the constant shifting of let's do this, let's do this, let's do this, let's do this is symptomatic of leadership that doesn't know where it wants to go. That's what you're saying?
How many is a plethora?
More than 3, less than 50.
That's true. Sorry. I would hate to say that you used the word plethora. Dude, that's a great movie. That should be a whole podcast, just watching the Three Amigos. Because I really want to do it. Either way. No, I think that you're right, but I think it goes even deeper than that. Okay. I think you're right. It is, we live, but I think it has a lot to do, and I've been thinking about this recently about how sensationalized we try and make church. Not that it isn't great, not that it isn't wonderful or fulfilling, but we always have to find the next new thing. And I think that I've said in those meetings with pastors who, they tell their church that they're a church of small groups and the community is their second priority outside of just Jesus. And yet 15% of their church is in community, and they're trying to think of the next thing to do because they go, I don't know, what's our next vision? And I go, well, maybe we should have a different discussion. Maybe we should really work on how are we going to hone in these things that are really key and important to us. And so, I don't know, I see so much of when we talk about this idea of where do we go when we don't know where to go. I see that a lot. I've been in that a lot, and it's always a 10-minute brainstorm, and they do a yearly a new campaign or a year-long initiative based off of a 15-minute meeting. And I think that that's just irresponsible leadership in general. And so there's not a lot of time or prayer. I think that if we really sat down and said, where do we need to go? Most of us would say, we kind of need to just sit here for a while. But we're afraid. I think often we're afraid people will leave. They won't be disconnected. I mean, I get that. If you don't have something new, people don't want to come, as that's the feeling, and that's the struggle. And so, I'm not sure where you land on that, but I think that that's a good place to start. All the way up until it backfires, like with a pandemic, like COVID. And everybody's like, oh no, we don't have any plans. All right, here's our new plan. We're going to online church, or whatever.
I mean, one sense in which the whole pandemic was beneficial, I think, or we'll see in the long term that it was beneficial, was that it did kind of shake us out of the routine, right? Like so many churches were doing the same things the exact same way that they've done them for so many years, and we don't even think about it. It was just muscle memory that this is how we do church. This is our MO. And then COVID happened, and that MO went out the window, and you had to do something different. And so far that has kind of stuck. I mean, a lot of churches you're seeing are being more innovative. They're doing things differently. They're putting things that they used to do by the wayside because they can't do those things anymore. Yeah. And so I think there is a sense in which that'll be helpful to churches in the long run. But yeah, I do think that there is kind of this, I don't know what to do, so we're just going to throw everything at the wall and see what sticks, kind of a thing. And spending time in prayer and genuinely seeking out what direction you need to go, what direction you need to lead your church is the first step. And
I don't even know if it's a church problem. I think it's something the church adopted from just the world, just daily. I mean, that is the world we live in, is the next new. I mean, it's been that way for years and years and years and years, but it's always the next new thing. And I think it was Eugene Peterson who wrote it in the 80s. Again, this is unscripted, so don't fact check me. But I want to say it's Peterson who wrote in the 80s that we are too busy and we don't take time and we don't set and pray and spend time. And I wonder how much even that influences how we make decisions. And you're right, throw it all against the wall, see what sticks. Or even sometimes I think it falls into the category of creating a mission statement or speaking an initiative that we want to be true. And so we just say it's true often. And I've had that, I had a church that didn't want to grow. They didn't like when our ministry grew. But their mission statement was, we exist for those not yet here. And I was like, well, wait a second. That doesn't work. And so, I don't know. I wonder how do we, maybe we've identified the problem from 12 angles, but how do we lead when we don't know where to go? What do we say to pastors?
I think the real issue, so what we've identified so far is, What we've identified so far is the problem of doing too much when you don't know what to do, right? And that's a relatively easy one to say. Well, stop doing everything and try and figure out what it is you're supposed to do.
What's your one thing?
Go, right. And focus on that. The real, where the rubber meets the road and where it gets really difficult is when you've spent the time in prayer. When you are doing your due diligence and you are genuinely pursuing God and asking what it is that you need to focus on, and you still don't have an answer,
No doubt.
What do you do that? So like you said, sometimes we need to just sit there, right? And but you've been doing that, and eventually you got to move.
Yeah.
But you don't know which direction to go. How do you lead your people in that scenario? And that's what I think we want to spend the rest of this time discussing. And I mean, that's a pretty tough one.
It is a tough one, but I wonder if the answer is not often hitting us right in the face or staring us in the face more often than not. I mean, if your church has, every church has the mission of the gospel and the Great Commission. And so, if anything, you fall back on that specifically. But also...
go ahead.
Well, no. I think that you've got that mission, and so, but then you have to wonder, is your mission deficient or not true, or do you just need to continue to work on what you believe your church's specific mission in that is, oftentimes. And so, I think that sheds, we'll get to this next episode, but that gets to how do you find a missional identity?
So a couple of the things that you don't do. One, we identified don't just do a whole bunch of stuff and hope that that's what gets you there. Two is don't do just whatever the people want in your church just because they want it.
Okay.
That's a pretty common issue where the pastor kind of turns into the politician we've talked about in the past, where, hey, this is the kind of ministry our people are going to like, so this is what we're going to do.
Sure.
And that just feeds that culture of consumerism that it's all about what they want. And I was talking to a guy who several years ago, business owner, very successful guy, owns a whole chain of coffee shops of higher end, super high quality coffee.
Yeah.
And he was telling me his journey in his business of starting 8 or 9 different locations. And and he said when he began that business, everybody that came to him when they first came, they were drinking like McDonald's coffee or gas station coffee, or they were, making Folgers coffee in the morning.
Yeah.
And the coffee that he offers is of a quality so much better than that. It's a lot more expensive, but it's a much better quality coffee, right? And he's like, and they didn't like it. And people would come in, they would ask for, the frilly Starbucks drinks with all the syrups and stuff in it.
Coffee.
He's like, that's not coffee.
Right.
And he's like, if I had just given the people what they wanted, I would have turned into Starbucks. And then I would have been crushed by Starbucks.
Right.
Because I can't compete with them. But I didn't give the people what they wanted. I taught them what they needed. I taught them what good coffee is. And then they changed what they wanted. And I think that's an amazing illustration for the church, that we as pastors don't need to just give the people what they want. We need to teach them what they need.
Well, and it goes
teaching
deep.
them what they need.
Yeah.
They begin to develop an appetite for it so that it becomes what they want.
Well, I think you hit a principle that we can talk even deeper about, but I think that it gets to the idea that is your mission when you don't know what to do, are you looking to entertain or are you looking to lead? And I don't think so many pastors they're not leading anymore, and they don't lead because, I hate the idea of I hate the idea of the victim mentality with everybody. It's like I don't want to say something where pastors go, "Yeah, it's the culture." Be like, "Well, no, you're accountable. You're a shepherd." But I do think we have some. That's part of why we want to do G6 University and why we do Growbox and do these things, because we want to see pastors and church leaders and believers stand up and say, "No, I own my own faith. I grow." But the culture is, and I think it's what he said was so wise. You end up trying to become every social cause, and then you get crushed by them because that's not what your end goal is. The church wasn't designed to be. No, the church was designed to meet needs and designed but to do so and point them to Jesus. The church isn't UNICEF. The church isn't. The church. I just use UNICEF as a random example, but the church isn't. Just, you need to come and you've got to make sure. Think about how many churches get crushed by benevolence ministries because they don't know how to manage it, rather than supporting benevolence ministries in the community and focusing where they focus, where they need to focus. And so I think that's right. When we look at our vision, we look at what we're doing. Does my vision ultimately lead towards trying to entertain and find what people want, or does it lead people to where they need to be?
Yeah.
That would probably eliminate half of our consternation on, I don't know where to go and what direction.
So first of all, we're dropping some big words in here: plethora and consternation.
Well, that's true.
That's
I do occasionally use a big word because I have a
we as educated folk.
I have a calendar with words, and today was either constipation or consternation. I can't remember.
You didn't have your glasses on when you read it?
No.
Yeah.
But it seemed good.
So
some people are spiritually constipated, and that I can use it again.
But that's one of the major takeaways from this. When you don't know how to lead, or you don't know where you're going, how do you lead your people? One of the first questions you need to answer is, what is the need?
Yeah.
Right? What do my people need? Not so much what do they want. I mean, you certainly want to consider what they want. You don't want to, if your entire church says we don't want this, and they continually tell you that, you may not be pastor there for long if you say, I don't care what you want, that you're going to need to listen to me and listen to what I'm telling you because that's what you need.
Maybe
that's not going to work out well for you.
Maybe
there's some balancing there.
I think too, understanding what want means. I think when you cast a vision, I mean, it almost sounds like we're confusing maybe a little bit like the idea of want and the idea of gifting and what we're good at and what we can contribute. And I think that sometimes we confuse those things in church, that if it's something, if all your people are, if your whole church is carpenters and you're like, all right, we're starting a metalworking business, like it's probably not going to be the thing to do. Right. But so everybody needs to be able to contribite. But I think is it something that does it leave them where they're at consuming, or does it lead them to give and to do more?
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's a good call.
And then I think probably one other thing I would add to it is in terms of what we mentioned earlier about just sitting there or sitting and waiting on the Lord and determining that at some point there does need to be some action. And,
sure.
And so you got to put one foot in front of the other. And, I was faced with two different scenarios of which direction I could go once, and genuinely did not know which option I should do. There was pros and cons of both. On paper they both looked equally as good, and I just didn't know. And that's kind of one of my downfalls is I tend to get into analysis paralysis, and so I'm going to over analyze everything and just won't make a decision because I got to sit there and I haven't looked at it from this angle yet, and so I'm going to keep going back and forth, right?
Right.
In this particular case, Whitney, my wife, was right there with me. Normally, if I get in that mode, she's just like, just stop it, do this one. And like, oh yeah, you're right. That is, and both of us in this case were like, I don't know what to do here. And we got some pretty sage advice from a longtime pastor who said, he said, just pick one. Just like neither one has any glaring red flags.
Yep.
You're not going to destroy ministry by choosing this one and not this one. Yeah. Just pick one, and God will bless it. But then commit to it and go after it wholeheartedly.
Yeah,
that's what you got to do. And so I think if you're in a place where you don't know where to go or how to lead your people, you need to spend that adequate time, do your due diligence, pursuing God and asking what it is you need to do, and seeking some clarity and some wisdom there. You need to identify what it is the people need and what your church needs, the group that you're leading needs. And then if you have a couple options that are equally good and there's no detriment necessarily or no foreseeable detriment to any of the options, then pick one and just go after it full force. And you know what? You may get a year or two down the road and go, that probably wasn't the best one. Maybe the other one could have been better. And you know, we can play the what if I'd done this game all day long. But then maybe you pivot down the road or something, right? And but you just pick one.
I think we could add something to that. And I think we could also say that maybe a third or fourth step in there too is to evaluate where your church is gifted. Because every context is going to be different. And so maybe the bridging line between, want versus gifting, that's such an important and big thing for us to understand. But that the church is, our churches, different ones are gifted in different ways. So what that looked like for us, for me in different ministries, one, I knew it also. I think you've got to know yourself as a pastor. Like, what am I passionate about? What do I think? Where do I feel like I can lead well? And I always, especially in student ministry, I had always had a deep passion for schools and for teachers, and we did that really well. Well, one, it's easy to love teachers and schools and people like that because they love being loved, right? But not everybody does that well. And so a lot of our motto became every student, right? And then every was our motto for everything, every student, every teacher. And we pushed that idea. And it was like if people said, well, why aren't we doing this other ministry over here and these 4 things? I said, because that's not where we're geared. We're geared at reaching students where they're at and taking care of the people around them. And man, as a result, we began to watch things happen. Now, fast forward, that's when we did college ministry, and that was growing. We had a different approach to how we did it. Similar that we went on to the mission field, but we would begin to reach college students in different ways. And so it just depends on all of that. But I think it's a good idea to look at and reevaluate your past and evaluate where your church has been gifted and thrived before.
Yeah.
Right? I think that's a good, quick discussion, and we want to hear more about what you think. We want you to take a minute and subscribe to our channel, and also click the little bell so that you'll get notifications when we post something new, because we're posting multiple times a week in a lot of cases, and we want to hear what you have to say, and we want you to watch it and enjoy our content. So, Listen, we love y'all. We'll talk to you soon.
Later.
Thank you for listening to the Mad Pastors Podcast. Mad Pastors is powered by G6 Allies, who knows that healthy ministry means having the right team behind you to provide worthwhile tools so ministry doesn't destroy you. If you'd like to partner with G6 Allies, here's a couple of ways you can do it. 1, you can rate, subscribe, and review this podcast so that as many people as possible can get the same help and encouragement that you're receiving. You can also visit g6allies.com/partner to see how you can financially partner with us. G6 Allies is dependent on viewers and listeners like you to support our ministry across the nation. If you have any questions or would like to contact the Mad Pastors for any reason, you can contact us at hello@g6allies.com. We'd love to hear from you.